Hello and welcome, I'm Raziel, and today I want to talk about why didn't the Emperor use warp drives. Okay, first things first, I need to clarify this bit. The warp drives I'm talking about are a la Star Trek and other science fiction, and not the warp drives that the Imperium uses, which goes through the warp. Right, got that clarification sorted. But let's just talk about some of the ways that, the factions do travel through space and, go faster than light to get to each individual planet. Well, the Imperium and the Orcs both use the warp, and so do Chaos. That's basically what they do. They just go through the warp, and that's how they go faster than light, because they're not really traveling within our universe. They're traveling within a side universe to do it, and it's kind of like that Sam Neill bit where he's showing him, basically they don't go through space. They just sort of take a diversion. Like they go through hell, as everyone says, and that's how they do it. The Eldar obviously use webway portals, but they can travel fast. They can travel at the speed of light when it comes to their craft worlds, but usually they use webway gates to go from planet to planet because it diverts all problems, and they don't even have to really deal with the warp because they sort of like tunnel under it. The Tau, they kind of skim upon the warp, like you're throwing like you're skimming stones across a pond. That's how the Tau do it. And the Necrons use inertialess drives to sort of keep accelerating, so there is no force acting upon the ship negatively, so there's no friction, nothing like that, but they only have the positive force that's acting upon it, such as acceleration, and that's how they work. And the only other one is the Tyranids. God, I really hate saying that, but it's the way it's pronounced apparently. And they are the only one that kind of uses this warp drive technology for Tyranids, right? It's technology, and it does work in the same way which we would see it in like Star Trek, and how like the Akubari theory works. You form a bubble around the ship, or in Tyranids' case around the fleet, and you contract the space in front of the ship or the fleet, and you expand it behind it. So the actual ship isn't actually moving. Technically, its space around it is moving, and that's the best way to put that. That's a very simplified way, but that does come with so many issues. Now, the first issue is what I'm going to bring up is the resources. Now, with Tyranids, you can just say in logic, 40k logic, they have the power because that's what their ships do, and it's probably psychic power which does it. It's like a psychic bubble or something. It's very, very vague in that one paragraph about the narwhal, but that's basically it with Tyranids. It's hard to describe because you really don't know how they power their ships. They could just power them like bugs, or insects, which would be common. But like I said, it's kind of weird. But they are probably the most similar to a warp bubble. The second way, and this kind of ties into 40k a lot more, is that it may need negative mass or negative energy. At this present time, this really is an issue within our universe because, in reality, because those two things don't exist. But they are coming around ways of doing it without negative mass or negative energy. But I'm using the Akubari metric on this one, which says that's what's needed. But we can kind of say that 40k does have this negative energy and negative mass, and that is with the warp. And so you would use that either to build a ship or the engine out of warp stuff, and that would create the negative energy and mass, or have the negative energy and mass which is needed to create the warp bubble, and therefore allow them to travel faster than the speed of light. Well, you know what I mean. But this comes with its own major issues, and the first big issue, which I think it would be, compared to travelling through the warp, you would actually be inviting demons all the time to every ship on board. Every time. Yes, there could be a Geller field around the area where you need it, or an internal Geller field around everything, just to make sure that the demons don't get through. But if that was to fail, all of a sudden you have a very much an internal invasion of demons within real space, which is the last thing you want. Demons in the warp are one thing, demons in real space are completely different. And if you've got a power source such as the warp very much nearby, they're going to be very strong as well, because you've literally got the warp there. We can kind of see how closer to the warp you are, and how strong the demons are is if we look at the old Warhammer Fantasy with the polar gates, and you can see that the further and further north you go, the more evil and twisted the monsters become, and the bigger they become, and eventually you get the Chaos Gods at the top. And when you have something like the warp directly in your ship, you would have exactly the same problems because that very strong warp sense, and you wouldn't need a psyker to summon them, you wouldn't need any rituals, they could just literally come on board because you've invited their home inside your ship. And that's a big issue. And now the resource side of it is also very resource heavy. This is going by today's standards, and by today's standards the theory goes that for a warp bubble to be able to power something the size of a plane, you would need something to 20 to 30% of the sun's power. So a lot of power is going to be needed to power it. And if you've got a large fleet like the Imperium had, you would be running out of stars and power very quickly. And so you wouldn't even have an Imperium to power the ships, let alone to fight for or take command of. And that would be a massive issue. And that would be, like I said, that's going to be a big problem. If you haven't got the resources to just to power your ships, you're not going to have the resources to feed the army or, anything else that you need. The vehicles, like I said, feed the army, the auxiliary stuff, taking the, keeping compliance on planets, making sure they are content. You would be losing resources so quickly just to power your ships, and that wouldn't be worth it for the Imperium. But of course we can say it's 40,000 years in the future, 30,000, 8,000 years in the future, or 28,000 years in the future, so maybe they could depower it down, but the power input would be so incredible, it would probably be just a waste of time at the point where going through the warp, you wouldn't need that much energy. You wouldn't need near enough the same amount. You just need the Psyker and the Astropath and everything else to make the transition into the warp. So there's that bit. Now my theory is that it was actually showing off to Chaos. And I know this sounds kind of weird, and believe me, it does. But given the way that the Emperor was attacking Chaos and his whole plan was to get rid of Chaos, he was literally just giving Chaos basically the middle finger by allowing his entire fleet go through their territory. And while they're going through their territory with the Gellerfields up, the Chaos Gods and the Chaos couldn't attack them. And this would have been a big issue for Chaos. A good example of this is like if you imagine a general is being invaded and being attacked, but the army attacking him cannot be touched by the general. They're completely invulnerable to him. And the opposing army, one invading him, instead of it just attacking him outright, is chipping away at his resources, is the way he keeps power. And the way the Chaos Gods keep power is obviously through worship. So the Emperor's literally going through the warp, through the Chaos Gods' territory, just to diminish their power at his next stop. Time and time again. So basically they will make a sector or a planet compliant, get rid of the worship of the Chaos Gods, just to go through the Chaos Gods territory again, to do it again and again and again. And this, to me, feels like a very much a deliberate attack, sort of like a psychological attack on the Chaos Gods, that they know they cannot touch this army while they're in their land, but they're still taking away their resources externally. And that's what I think it is. That's just my opinion. And so that's what I think. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this matter, because I think it's quite interesting, actually. Why do you think the Emperor didn't use warp drives, such as Star Trek, and decided to go through the warp instead? Keep your thoughts down below. I'd be really interested to hear them. And so, anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you all have a good day. I hope you're doing well. Oh, you do, actually. I think you guys are great. I like seeing the same people come up again and again as well. I like seeing your comments, even if you disagree with me. I do like that. I think it's great to have a community where we can all just sit down and chat down there. I don't delete comments. I always leave a heart if I can. I will reply as well when I can. So yeah, you guys get chatting down there. I love it when you guys do that. You get into some real good conversations down there. I'm glad I can actually say that now. And thank you. Links to winning games down below as always. If you wish to save up to 20% on your Warhammer, free delivery after £20. There is also Forbidden Planet if you like comics, DVDs, toys, etc, etc, etc. And there is also my comics, which if you want to see Red Riding Hood smack about some cyborg werewolves, I think in a very violent and nasty way. That's that. And finally, comics, t-shirts, prints, etc, etc. All artwork and everything, all the artwork's done by me. And there you go. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Goodbye.